So you're thinking of moving to Myrtle Beach, you need to see these mistakes I made before you do it. What's happening, guys? It's Jeremy Blanton with Remax Southern Shores, and today I wanted to do a video and talk about some of the biggest mistakes that I experienced when my family and I moved here back in 1998. When we made the move to the beach back in 1998, I thought we were pretty well seasoned, understood the area, and knew what we were doing making the move here. We had visited the area tons of times, come on vacation here, so many times I couldn't even count. We knew where all our favorite restaurants were. We knew where all the things we wanted to go shop for. We knew all of that stuff about Myrtle Beach, we thought. Well, there was a lot of things that we didn't know that I wish we had thought about before making the move. So today I want to take some time and kind of share some of the biggest mistakes that we experienced when we made the move to Myrtle Beach back in 1998. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about that's on my list is that when we moved here, we thought we were going to live in Myrtle Beach just like we do when we come on vacation. You know, go to the beach every single day, sit there and enjoy the waves from the time the sun comes up to the time the sun goes down. We were going to go out to eat all the time. We were going to be able to go to all of the evening shows and go shopping and do all of those fun things that we do every single time we come to Myrtle Beach on vacation. You know, we're one of the most popular tourist destinations across the country where people come every single year. Millions upon millions of visitors flock to Myrtle Beach to come and enjoy some of our beautiful sand and all of the things that we have to do here. You know, I've shared the fact before that there are enough restaurants in Myrtle Beach that you could eat 3 meals a day for a year and a half and never eat the same place twice. So there's tons of things to do, tons of options out there. And when we made the move, we thought, well, we're just going to continue to live the way we did. But the reality is that you can't do that. You can't afford it unless you're a multimillionaire. You know, each and every day, it costs a ton of money if you're going to go out to eat. So one of the first things we had to do was figure out where we're going to cook, where are we getting our groceries, where are we going to do those things. We also thought, well, we're going to go to the beach every day, so we need a home that's right over by the ocean so that we can walk down to the beach every day and enjoy the waves and sit there and just relax and live the beach life is what we thought. But the reality is you still have to do day-to-day living. You know, things like grocery shopping, cleaning the house, taking care of the yard, going to doctor's appointments, taking the puppy to the vet, all of those things that you have to do for day-to-day living. Where are all of those situations and where are all of those things in relation to where we're living? We didn't really think about those things at all. Instead, we thought beach, and that was the only thing on our mind. So when we purchased our first home here in Myrtle Beach, it was in Briarcliff Acres. It is a fantastic neighborhood located right near Barefoot Landing. Beautiful homes in this neighborhood, custom built, 1-acre lots on every single property. So you would think this is the greatest thing in the world. But for us, where we were in our time of life, it was really not that great of a place for us to live. Why? Because each and every day we had to get out and go to work. And to go to work, we had to deal with all of the tourism traffic of Barefoot Landing for 6 to 8 months of the year. And nowadays, with the way things have become more of a year-round tourist destination, that number, instead of being 6 to 8 months a year, is almost every single day you would have to deal with it. So where we lived in the neighborhood, it could easily take us an additional 8 to 10 minutes just to get out to 17 to make if we had to make a left to head south when leaving the development anytime. The other thing was that there was continual noise because our house was back near 17 or Kings Highway, and so we would hear all of the continual traffic going on. You know, I've spoken before about one of the places where my wife and I lived shortly after getting married, where we were 1,000 yards from the beach. Now, you would think this would be the greatest place to live in the world. It was in downtown Myrtle Beach. It was on the Golden Mile, 1,000 yards from the ocean. You would think, man, this is the most amazing thing in the world. But the reality is that we couldn't really enjoy being outside unless we went down to the beach. We had children at the time that were smaller that we couldn't really let go play in the yard because, heaven forbid, the ball goes out into the street and they go chasing it. They're going to get run over by a tourist car that's driving down the road, flying around. They're not paying attention to what's going on. In addition, out the back, once again, we were close to 17. So every single night, we would hear sirens up and down the road. We would see the flashing red lights in the windows. We had to go buy blackout curtains and hang them in all of our bedrooms just so that we could try to get some sleep at night because it was continual noise. The other thing that happened is all of that salt air being that close to the ocean really did a number on all of our metal things that we had that sat outside. I just bought a brand new grill when we moved into this home, and it was completely rusted after living there for 12 months. Just some of the things that you may not take into consideration. Our cars being that close to the ocean were continually dirty. Every single day or two, I'd have to wash it, and the next day, it'd have this film on it. So there were so many things about living that close to the beach that we just never took into consideration. So if you're thinking about making the move, and yes, I understand for most of us, being close to the beach is an important thing. But one of the things you have to take into consideration is this. You're still going to have to do life. You're still going to have to clean the house. You're still going to have to do the laundry. You're going to have to cook. You're going to have to do the dishes. You're going to have to take care of the yard. You're going to have to go to doctor's appointments. Or if you're like me, you're going to work still every day. And so going to the beach is not going to be the top priority all the time. While we want it to be, unfortunately, the things in life that have to be are going to make it down the list, push it down the list a little bit more. So if you have to drive over to the beach, and it's a 10 to 12-minute drive to go there once or twice a week, when you have that time to go, it's really not that big of a deal. One of the things you got to take into consideration is this. If you right now are someone who's watching this video, and maybe you live in, say, Ohio or Pennsylvania or New York or New Jersey, or even those in California or Oregon, you may not live right by the ocean right now. You might have to drive 5, 6, 7 hours just to get to a beach. So if it's a 15-minute drive, is it really that much too long? I don't think it is. I wouldn't let that stop you. And instead, I would start looking at it. The other thing is that you're going to also save a ton of money. That home that we bought in Briarcliff Acres, nowadays, those homes are probably running in the $800,000 to $1 million for most things in that development, especially the size of the home that we had. In comparison, I can go over to the west of the waterway to, say, Carolina Forest, or over near Water Tower Road, where there's some great new developments coming in, and I can find a great property there. I was over in Waterside. It's a Meritage community that's being built over there. If you want more information on it, reach out to me. I can get you all the details on it. I was there just this last week, but I was showing some property to one of my clients. We found a great home over there. It was a 4-bedroom, 3-bath home, all on a single level for right around like the $355,000 mark. There's going to be amenities in the community, all kinds of great things, and there may be 5 to 10 minutes over to Barefoot Landing. So there's a lot of great stuff that's nearby, but because we've gone on the west side of the waterway, the cost of the property has gone down. In addition, the insurance, something else that we don't take into consideration when we live really close to the beach, is that your insurance costs can go up exponentially. But going on the west side of the waterway, those numbers are usually going to drop down as well. So before you say to me, Jeremy, you don't know what you're talking about. I don't want to buy a home with you. You don't know anything about it. I'm going to find someone else. Take some time and really consider this and think about, do I really need to be that close to the beach? Or if I have to drive 5 to 10 minutes to go to the ocean every couple days when I get to go down there, it's not going to be that big of a deal. The second thing that we didn't take into consideration when we were buying a home, and we didn't really even ever think about it, and I don't remember ever hearing my parents ever even mentioning, but Myrtle Beach is in an area that is prone to hurricanes at times of the year. This year we didn't have any, and when we don't, actually, our local meteorologist, Ed Piotrowski, great guy, here's a picture of him. So when we don't have a hurricane, Ed throws a giant party here at the beach. This year he's doing one at the Hangout, and there'll be thousands of people that'll stop by to have pizza. It's a big fundraiser that they do to celebrate. But on any single year, there is always a possibility of us having a hurricane. There's also a possibility that with that hurricane, there could be some wind damage. But that's not really what does a lot of the damage here in our area. It's not normally the wind, because our homes are constructed to withstand it. The windows are usually rated to hold 100 plus miles, some of them 150 plus mile an hour winds, that they're not going to get blown in when the hurricane comes through. But what we do usually experience that causes a lot of the damage is flooding in our area. We're known as the Low Country. We're the part of the state where it's basically at sea level. My house sits about 40 feet above sea level where we live. We took a trip the other week up to the North Carolina mountains, and when we were up there, it jumped from 40 to 50 feet above sea level to up to close to 2,000 feet. And my kids were kind of feeling weird up there because we're not used to that high of an elevation. But here in South Carolina, especially here in Horry County, we're in what's called the low country, meaning it's low-lying areas. And so when a hurricane comes through, it usually brings with it a lot of rain, heavy, heavy rain. And that's what causes a lot of the damage. Back during Hurricane Florence, one of the most destructive hurricane on record in our area in the last 50 years, that hurricane had a lot of damage, not from the winds coming through and blowing houses over or putting a tree through a home or something like that, but from the flooding that took place. And not only the flooding, but the flooding that came days and days after the storm went through. So those are the things we have to kind of take into consideration. So once again, when you're buying a house, you want to make sure that you talk to an agent that can tell you, hey, is this home in a flood zone? You can try to figure out the Horry County flood maps. Best of luck to you if you can figure out and understand them. But you want to talk to an agent who has the connections to insurance companies to find out, is this home in flood zone X, which is the zone you want, or is it going to be in AE, which means I'm going to need to carry additional flood insurance on my home and probably have additional payments that are going to be paid each and every month just to cover that flood insurance. Because if I have a loan, I'm going to be required by the lender to cover flood insurance on top of the regular property insurance as well. So this is just the second thing you really want to take into consideration. Now, when we moved here, we didn't really think about it. We just said, hey, beach, and that was our first mind, and we went to it. And it cost us in the long run. I never forget when we bought our home, it was during the hurricane season. And once again, if you're buying a home at any time of the year, once you get it under contract, my suggestion is to always go ahead immediately and try to get an insurance policy bound on the home so that the minute that you close, you have coverage. Because if there's a named storm that comes out in the Atlantic Ocean during the time of your contract, when you're under contract and waiting to close, and it's day of closing and it's a named storm, they're not going to write a policy for you. Now, if you have the binding in place before that storm is named, you're good to go. But I remember back when we were buying our first home here at the beach, there was not the ability to get it. And my dad kind of sat around and waited for it. And then all of a sudden, it was week of closing and there was a named storm out in the Atlantic Ocean. And so we were feverishly scrambling around, calling all of these different insurance companies, trying to find someone who would give us insurance. We ended up having to find a policy that was close to $8,000 for 1 year of coverage on the home just because of the named storm. But we had to have it because we were buying a home and we had to protect our investment. So we ended up having to pay that. Now, once the storms go out, you can always go back through and renegotiate and find another company, but you don't want to get stuck in that. So my suggestion is always, once you're under contract, talk to an insurance company and get that in place. Once again, if you need help with insurance on that, let me know. I've got Terry over at We Insure. She's awesome to work with. I can get you hooked up with her as well for that. All right, so the third thing on this list today, and this is one that, we really kind of were boneheads about this one, and that is that we did not really do the research on the agent that we were going to hire to help us buy a home. We had gone and visited an open house, found the agent who was on site doing it right now in this new development, and we thought, hey, we really like it. And we thought we were going to buy that home and tried to purchase it, and well, it didn't work out, and it was the last home in the development. And she said, well, I'm a general brokerage agent too. I own my own brokerage and I can go help you buy a home anywhere. And so we said, really? Okay, great. We didn't really do any research on her or anything. And what we ended up finding out after the fact, after closing and moving here, is that she didn't really do a lot of real estate sales. Instead, what she did is a lot of real estate rentals and on-site sales. But she didn't really know the area. She didn't really have a knowledge of communities, or whether, living up on the northern end of the beach versus the southern end of the beach, what were the differences like? She didn't really have the information for us on like, hey, you might want to consider buying over on the west of the waterway. It's going to be less money. None of that kind of stuff. She just basically was an order taker and didn't really do a lot of research or have a lot of information for us. And, my father, being a school superintendent, a very educated man, thought, well, I don't really need help. I can figure this out on my own. Well, the reality is we ended up buying that home in Briarcliff Acres. We get to the day of closing, we get into the house afterwards, and my father says, "Well, where's the garbage disposal? There's no garbage." And he's looking around in the sink like this. "Where's the garbage disposal?" "Oh, well, it says that they had one." Well, come to find out, the house didn't have sewer. It was on a septic system. Now, the property disclosure that was filled out on that property, which if there was a good agent on our side would have known right away, stated that the house had sewer. But in this development, there is no sewer for anyone. Everything's on septic systems because it's part of the older part of Myrtle Beach before they had sewer lines and all that in place. Well, if you've ever been in a place that has septic systems, most of the time you cannot have a garbage disposal. So when we're looking for a garbage disposal, there's none in place because of the home not having the correct type of plumbing in it. So this was just one of the many, many reasons of why we ended up having all kinds of headaches with this home that we purchased. If we had an agent that was full-time on our side, we probably would have been given the right information, had someone who's there who's giving us a little bit of guidance along the way to say, hey, you know what, if these are things that you want, make sure you can take this into consideration before going and writing that offer on that property, because at the end of the day, it's not going to have all of the things that you want, and you're going to end up with a headache. And well, we ended up having that. So after living in the house for about 2.5, 3 years, we ended up selling it and moving it on to somewhere else. And that time around, we definitely hired the right type of agent to help us with it. So if you're thinking about making the move to the area, you definitely want to do that. Now, this is going to be a little shameless plug here for me, but guys, if you're thinking about moving to the area, I would love to help you. While I enjoy shooting videos for you all and sharing information about living in Myrtle Beach, my full-time job is a real estate agent here in the area. I've been fully licensed in Myrtle Beach since 2001 and have done this full-time for the last 10 plus years. So if you are thinking about making a move to the area and you want someone who has a pretty good knowledge of the communities around here, reach out to me. My information is going to be down below in the description. You can go to jeremyblanton.com and book a call right there, and we can talk about your move to the area and give you the right direction to help you make the move as smooth and as simple as possible to the area. All right, so let's get back to this and let's talk about the next biggest mistake. The fourth mistake that we had when we moved here is that we didn't really take into consideration how hot it is during the summertime. You know, when we come on vacation, we always were staying in oceanfront resorts where there's always an ocean breeze, and it was wonderful. But we didn't take into consideration that there's also a lot of humidity. And when you go away from the beach, that breeze dies down and you're just dealing with hot. You know, some of my good friends that moved here from Texas a couple years back, when they were moving here, I said to them, you know, guys, it's pretty hot at the beach. They go, oh, we're fine with heat. We live in Texas. We deal with Texas heat all the time. I was like, okay. So they moved here 5 minutes into unpacking the truck to move into the house. They're dripping with sweat. And they're like, oh my gosh, it's so hot. Why did we do this? What are we doing? Guys, it is hot. It is humid here at the beach. And we have a lot of just sometimes miserably hot days here at the beach. But one of the other sides that we have to that is that we don't really normally deal with snow. You know, one of the great things about living here, and one of the reasons a lot of people are moving here from the Northeast, is that number one, it's a better cost of living, so it's more affordable. But the second big reason is they don't want to shovel snow anymore. They're tired of it. They've either slipped and fallen and broken a hip, or had somebody injured and their backs are sore and they don't have the physical capability to go out and shovel it anymore. And so they just don't want to deal with it. You know, one of my other good clients, they were friends of ours. They live here in Myrtle Beach now. A couple years back, though, they moved to Michigan. He had a position that opened up there at a church, and he took a student ministry pastor job and was there for 2 years. And I told him when they went, I was like, I don't know if you're going to like being up there. And like, oh, no, it'll be great. We know people, and it'll be great. Well, what we found is that they were miserable during the wintertime. Why? Because the beautiful blue skies that we experience here in Myrtle Beach for 300 plus days of the year, they weren't experiencing for half the year. Instead, they had gray dreariness with just this bitter cold and snow on the ground. They couldn't go outside and do anything. And they found that it was really starting to affect their overall mental health and well-being. Why? Because they were stuck inside. So moving here to the beach, you're going to be able to enjoy the outside, be able to go outside and enjoy things most all year round. Now, that doesn't mean we won't see snow. This last year we saw snow, as I've shared in the past. My youngest daughter, she's now 11 years old. She has now seen snow in her lifetime 3 times. This is the first time, though, last year that it actually lasted for longer than till lunchtime. And she got to go out every single day and enjoy it and had the biggest of time out there in the snow, just having the best of life. So if you're thinking about making the move, just understand the summertime, it might be really, really hot here, but the wintertime, you're going to love. All right. And the final thing, the final biggest mistake that we ran into when we moved here and have moved a couple times around the area is that we are a family that likes to have amenities. We like to have the community pool that we can go and use. And so we didn't really take that into consideration when we first bought our home. We thought only about the beach and bought a home based on that. Now, I personally don't mind going down to the beach, but I would much rather on most days go to the pool and just be able to jump in, do it, get out, and go back to my house. I'm not a big fan of sand between my toes. I'm not a big fan of the ocean and getting beaten up by the waves a lot of time. It's beautiful. I enjoy going and sitting and relaxing at it, but I would on most any day rather go to the pool and do that. Now, I don't want a pool in my backyard because then that's maintenance and expenses that I have to take on. But I want to be in a community that's going to offer those types of amenities. Well, when we bought our first home here, there were no amenities in the development other than a beach access. And we thought that's all we needed. And so we bought the home based on that. Well, obviously, after all of the things that I talked about earlier on that home, we decided to move. And when we first moved, we went west. We went way west. We went all the way out to Conway, close to the university, and lived out there. And when we were in that neighborhood, we now lost the beach and, well, there was no amenities either. So we had really nothing. So if we wanted to go to the pool, we wanted to do anything, we didn't have any of those options available to us. So around 2008, 2009, we started trying to figure out where to move. Finally, we realized that, hey, you know what? We want to be in a neighborhood with amenities. And when the real estate market crashed and I lost everything, and this is probably way too much information for y'all, but when that happened, my wife and I were forced to rent, and we ended up going to a development that had a community pool. And we started to use this community pool with our children all the time. And we realized really quickly that to us, amenities are a huge factor. It's something that we want to have available to us each and every day. So when my wife and I were finally able to purchase again around 2019, we decided we wanted to pick based on the things that were important to us. For us, it was location to where our kids have everything in our church. It was important for us to have a home with amenities. It had to be a home that was close to all the shopping and day-to-day activity things that we do. And so we ended up falling in love with Carolina Forest. We ended up going back to the farm and checking it out again, and that's where we ended up going. So why did we pick there? Well, one of the big reasons is the amenities that we have available. In the farm at Carolina Forest right now, your amenities are $100 a month. And for that, we're going to get access to 2 community pools. We're going to get access to a basketball court. We're going to get access to a fitness center. There's a clubhouse that we can use. There's also weekly trash pickup. There's basic cable and high-speed internet, all included in our monthly fee. We're one of the very few developments in Olivory County that has that type of stuff all available to you, especially at that price. But for us, it's a giant savings each and every month on our cable bill and internet bill to be able to have it all wrapped in. So when you're thinking about buying a home, before you reach out to me, before you reach out to any other agent, one of the things that I would highly recommend is sit down and write out a priority list and discuss it with your spouse and say, okay, what are the things that we really are going to need, and see if if you first align with those things, figure out, is this really stuff that I need or just things that I think I want? Once you have all that down, then you're ready to really get started on the purchase process. Anyway, guys, I hope you found value in this video today. If you did, do me a favor as always, give it a thumbs up, get the bell on, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.